Yeah, hi, this is a demo on cloning in Photoshop, and it's going to help us understand masking ultimately, or the beginnings of some basic fundamentals to masking in Photoshop. So that term masking is going to make a little bit more sense as you work with the tools in Photoshop that require or help us blend images together. And I'm gonna go through a demo where we're gonna do a trick called cloning, where we're gonna take a series of 3 images and collapse them into a single image that has 3 facets of it that aren't possible, right? In this case, it's going to be the same person in 3 different places within a room in a single image. So what you're looking at right now are the 3 images that I've taken, and for the cloning assignment, it's a lot easier to do this assignment, more effective, I think, in producing the illusion of a clone if you stick to using a tripod or having your camera in a set position for all 3 images, and that will help blend the images more seamlessly and give you that cloning effect. So I have all 3 images selected in Bridge, Adobe Bridge, and I'm going to go up here and open them in Camera Raw. Mainly because these are shot in Camera Raw. If they're not shot in Camera Raw, you can still open them into Camera Raw, but in this case, I'm just gonna do auto for the sake of speed and give ourselves an auto edit to all 3. This one's a little bit darker than the other 2. Let me see if I can just lighten that a little bit and give ourselves a little bit more exposure, just for the sake of the demo, just to keep them relatively even. Now this one gets a little bit more yellow, but that's okay, no biggie. Now I've got these 3 images. I'm gonna go ahead and open them up into Photoshop. So these are gonna open up as 3 separate files here in Photoshop. Now, you have a couple options or ways to bring them into a single image, and you get to select one that's your foundational image. So in this case, I'm going to use this one as a foundational image. I'm going to grab these 2 images and bring them into here as separate layers. Okay, so one of the ways you can do that, you can go up here just like a tab and select Command A, which is select all, right? So select all, which is Command A, and you can copy, and you can bring it over here and do Command V, which is paste, Command V. So essentially I just copied that image and brought it into this foundational layer, and you can see here, there's my foundational layer, and I'm deselecting or selecting that eyeball right there to view that layer. Now the topmost layer is going to be the most visible layer, alright? So I've brought in this layer into this image. Another way of doing it is to select this thumbnail here and literally drag it over to this other image and plop it down on top. Now one of the reasons maybe to do this or not, depending on what you're doing, is it doesn't always center it exactly, so you have to move it around and make sure it's centered. Okay. It doesn't matter though, in this case, if you brought all 3 and they weren't aligned, we're going to, for the purposes of this assignment, we're going to auto align these layers. So now we are, I'm going to widen this up so we can have a full window. We have 3 layers here. Now this background layer is locked. For this it doesn't totally matter, but if you wanted to release this layer from being locked and doing, if you wanted to do any creative edits onto that, you can double click on that layer and create it as a unlocked layer, so 0, 1, 2. That's totally up to you. It doesn't really matter unless you plan to come in and do some edits specifically to that layer. When it's locked, it's telling you you shouldn't or can't. Okay. Now, what we're gonna do initially is we're gonna go up here, up into Edit, and we're going to go to, oh, sorry, let me select all of them. So we have 0, the layer 0 is selected right now. If I hold down the Shift key and select layer 2, everything between there gets selected. Okay, so now I have all 3 layers selected, and if I go up to Edit here, and you'll see it says Auto Align Layers. This is going to open up a dialog window here, and what we're going to do is we're going to auto align these layers. So if I hit OK, what it's going to do is, in an intelligent way, assess the information in those images and the pixels and tonal range and all that, and auto align that. Now, it's because I shot with a tripod, it's really close to perfect, but if you zoom in here and look at this edge here, you can see there's a little bit of shift in the image, and that was probably because of just barely selecting or hitting the trigger on the shutter release on the camera. It even gave just a slight amount of shake there, right? And so you can see that that's not perfectly aligned. Okay, now we'll crop that out later, but for now I'm going to bring us back, and I'm going to start showing you how to think about bringing all 3 of those figures into this image. So that top layer has our figure in the background here. If I deselect that image, you can see it disappears. This figure disappears, and they're over here on this second layer. Okay, and then here they're in front. So what I'm going to do for the sake of this demo is I'm going to say front, I'm going to say right, and I'm just double clicking this, and I'm going to say back. Okay, so now we have a way of easily remembering which is which. Now I'm going to do one more thing for this demo, and this is also very helpful for you early on and playing around with masking. If you select these lines over here and you go to Panel Options, you're going to get a dialog here that will allow you to increase the size of the thumbnail. So I'm going to increase it all the way, and I'm going to hit OK, and you can see that these get bigger. So you can start to see a little bit more information. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create what's called a layer mask. And here is the icon, Add Layer Mask, for doing that. And I'm going to go ahead and do that here as well on this back layer. Okay. Now the way layer masks work is I'm going to need to reveal the information that's on the layer below up to this layer, and then reveal the information on this layer to here. Alright, now one of the ways of doing that initially is I'm going to deselect this one, and I'm going to, you can see this layer here, but you can't see this content down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this layer, which is our right layer, and I'm going to change the opacity down to about 50% so I can see this figure in front here. Now I'm going to select that layer mask. Notice that I'm here, I'm selecting on the image layer, but I'm going to move over here and select this layer mask, and I'm going to use the brush tool over here, so that when I select the brush tool here, I'm brushing in the color black, or the fill of black, onto a white mask. And what that essentially does in Photoshop is it pokes a hole through this layer into this layer. Okay, so it pokes a hole through this image layer here to reveal what's below only in that black area. Okay, and you do have some options up here of how you do that. You can have it softer around the edges or harder around the edges of that brush. You can play around with some of the blending modes. We're going to stick to normal for now. And you can also change the opacity of what gets blended. Don't worry about these other things. These are a little bit more complex, a little more advanced for now. So I'm selected on this mask, and I'm in a brush mode, and I'm just going to stick with this brush size for now, and I'm going to paint in. Actually, I'm going to increase just to show you how to do this. You have a couple ways of increasing. If you wanted to come up here, you could change the size of your brush, and you can see how it gets bigger. But the better, quicker way to do this is your open or close brackets. So open bracket, close bracket allows you to easily do that. So I'm going to open up here and give myself a little bit more space to bring in. And I'm going to be a little bit cautious around the surrounding because the lighting changes sometimes between images. And just stick to that figure as much as possible. Okay? Alright. Now you can see over here that I've masked out this black area right here. It is bringing this area through to this image. Okay, now if I refill this to 100%, now we have these two images together. Okay, now you can see though that there's a little bit of blending that needs to happen there, and I'm curious if I accidentally did something. So I think maybe there's a little bit. No, I can't really see. I'll come back that up. Now, I'm going to go ahead and reveal this layer, and what you'll notice is that that top layer, this mask, is blocking out both of these from what's below. Okay, so I'm going to select this layer, and I'm going to change the opacity so I can reveal both of those. And what you're going to do is you're going to need to reveal this and this up to this top layer because that already exists. Alright, now I'm back to my brush, painted in black. Make sure you select that mask layer, and I'm going to open up these brackets, or open up the bracket to enlarge the brush diameter. Okay, and I'm bringing this through, and I'm going to go ahead and bring this through, and luckily I had this student sit very still, so it made this very easy. Alright, now I have those two things through. I'm going to readjust that opacity, and now I am curious why that is coming through there slightly. So I am going to see that if I paint it here in black, it gets rid of that. So I don't want to do that. And if I paint in white, watch this. You can either switch these here to fill with white or black, or hit the X key. Okay, so if I'm in X key, see how what happened here is that I have a little too much feathering or softness out on the outside of that brush. And see if I'm cutting into our figure right now, see how it's getting rid of that mask, that black mask or the hole. It's repainting that so it's opaque again. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make my brush more fine, and we brought in what we needed here, but I'm gonna paint black here again. So I'm gonna hit the X key to switch back to black, and I'm gonna come back in and brush in this figure. Okay. Now, this is where you want to fine-tune. So I've come around right here, but there's a little bit of halo happening on this end. So I'm going to switch back to white, but this time I'm gonna harden that brush a little bit. Okay, see that? And bring in that figure behind. So there's no halo. Okay, so now in order to deal with our issue of cropping here and having that edge that wasn't fully perfectly aligned, you have a couple options. You can crop now, or you can go ahead, if you're happy with the image as is, you can flatten. Okay, and then select the crop tool, and what I want you to stick with is the original ratio. And what I would do if I were you in this situation, see how I can pull from either the bottom edge, I can pull from this edge, and see how it's creating and keeping the same proportion. You can also hold down the Alt key and it'll come in from all sides. But one thing, if you'll notice, see how it's snapping when I get close to that edge? It's snapping to the edge. That's often by default. In Photoshop, you can change that by deselecting under the View option the snap, and that'll allow me to more freely come very close to that edge. So if I want to zoom in here and see what's happening, and I want to just barely come in from that edge, I can do that with the correct proportion. And if you select the check up here or the Enter key, it will crop that. All right? Now, this is where you then would start your workflow to web size or print size or whatever it is that your output is, and save that image in that way. And you have a cloned image. All right, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. This is our demo on cloning.